Let's go.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Council members from
Here.
Emerald Baker. Here. Farrell. Here. Happy.
He'll be here in shortly.
Keller.
He'll be here shortly.
Miller.
Here.
Mayor Fallon.
Here.
Citizen member Bump.
I think she's online, but, if not, we'll excuse her.
Okay. Bataccio.
Here.
Pruitt.
Here.
Seeger.
Here.
Sipe. Here. Swanziger.
Here. Can we confirm Marianne's on? Yeah, Marianne, are you on? Do you?
I was here right there.
Well, she's, I can control, I think.
Oh.
I am watching, yes.
For voting.
Are you?
Did you hear, did you hear me?
Are you gonna be voting at all or just watching?
I'm not sure I can vote because sometimes I'll have to stop. So
Okay,
I'll just watch.
all right, thank you. And you, an approval for the May 8th.
Sorry, can I make a
Oh,
quick
yes.
amendment to the, the public comment section is left off the agenda, so I'd like committee approval to add it to the agenda.
Okay, do we want that at the beginning or the end? It seems kind of awkward at the end, but.
It does.
But we discuss a lot of things and somebody might want to talk about something that we discussed, so,
I think that's why it's been in the end, but
yeah. So, okay, we'll put it.
Number 3.
As number 3 and. Or at the end of number 3 or make 4, 3, I don't know, make 4.
Alright.
Five.
Okay, so make it 4 and make that 5.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
4. Public comment will be 4.
Madam Chair, we don't have any public tonight, but for what it's worth, I would prefer it at the beginning because I feel like there's been quite a conversation since the last budget meeting. And it would be nice, assuming the work public to hear what their thoughts are, so I was silent, but the truth is I would prefer it be even before than after. That's
Okay.
especially given, the conversation we're in.
Okay. Okay, so I need, we'll still keep it at the end since there's nobody right now. I need approval for, I need a motion for approval for the May 8th, 2024 budget committee meeting minutes.
I move to approve the May 2024 budget committee minutes. On second.
Moved and seconded, is there any discussion?
Should be in your packet, find that in somebody tonight. Under your.
That's this is, that's the copy that I brought, and then this is Cassie.
Okay, no discussion, okay, all those, sorry.
Councilmember Compton.
Aye.
Emerald Baker.
Aye.
Farrell. Aye. Miller.
Aye.
Mayor Fallon.
Aye.
Citizen member Bataccio.
Abstain.
Pruitt.
Aye.
Seeger.
Aye.
Sipe. Aye. Swanziger.
Alright.
Okay, so let's go back to general fund. It's tab 6, if I remember correctly. Wait a minute, actually, so I do want to bring something up before we get started on that. I would like to get a consensus, I don't know why I didn't think of this sooner, and I apologize, but I would like to see added to the budget officer's report, the status of the pool, the Oregon pool that we have where we.
LCIP.
Government investment.
Yeah, so the those acronyms. Just going back 3 years, just like we do in the budgets, I know it doesn't have anything to do with the budget, but it does have to do with our finances, and I think it's a good idea for us as a budget committee to keep an eye on the level that it's at, because, there was comment at the last meeting that we've lost $1.4 million out of that fund, and I'd be curious to see why and, where it's going, so if that's something that we can, get a consensus on, I think that would be a good idea to add to the, and I'd like to see it started this year because of what was said at the last meeting. Which shouldn't be too hard to do. So. Is there a consensus for that?
And actually, that's something administrative benefit fit for us.
Yes, the budget
Yeah.
officer, yes. Yes. Go ahead and show. Okay, so. We got a consensus.
Oh, is our finance guy on tonight?
Yes.
Carl was on.
Carl's.
Yeah, right in the middle.
Okay. There he is, okay, thank you.
Okay, now let's go into tab 6. Tab 6. Jordan,
Yeah, so I sent out the updated numbers, the last budget meeting, the committee had wanted to update the rental or use of property rental as well as the administrative overhead fee. So I updated those numbers. Carl was supposed to double check the workers' comp number, we've not updated that one yet. But in the draft I had presented in the packet and in front of you tonight, is adding in the 54,300 from the extra, for the more administrative fee increase. I backed out the $10,000 from the support tourism fund. Not tourism, sorry, support community programs fund. And I also backed out any contingency funds put in the cost of the law enforcement, and we are still $70,000 short. Just to give people an idea. Just want to give you some numbers there, where it would stand.
so I have a question on that, because in the minute that we just approved, you said that you, is that because that you're only $23,280 away from the, so you said it still leaves a increases from taxes, fees, charges, and shared revenue for the general fund still leaves a deficit of $23,880. So that gap has grown, is that what you're?
I'd have to double check.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now you're saying there's a gap of how much?
Oh, that's just the gap, just pertaining to the increase for the law enforcement, not any other salary increases, insurance increases. That was just trying to get even with the law enforcement, not any other increases.
Okay, so so we need 73,000. Is this?
At least, yes, at least.
Did you tell me what we were, I'm sorry.
I have a question, with Sheriff English, have you had any negotiation with him on that, or is that just the amount that he's?
I asked him and they said, in order to hire the officer to provide the coverage, that's the amount of money they need. If we went, on 16 hours, it wouldn't be enough to hire the officer. That's kind of an all or nothing.
And I had a conversation with him yesterday, kind of a type of topic. But he did mention something that was really interesting, that if Cascade Locks votes to not have the services here on, the patrol on foot, then that's okay. But when we come, if Cascade Locks decides that they want to come back and say, no, we really want sheriff's presence, at that time, we knew about the long-term contract, but this is something I think no one thought of, is that if you shut down anything in government, it doesn't pop back up the next day. So it could feasibly take going through that process if Cascade Locks decides, hey, we really do want sheriff presence. If it's been stopped, it could take up to 2 years to get an officer back in Cascade Locks. So that's definitely something to really think about.
I thought that the original number that we were paying for the law enforcement was like 110, and it was going up to 156.
It went from 116 to 154.
That's not 73,000 or 71,000.
Yes, but there's other increases as well. It's
Okay,
not
so
just,
it's not just law enforcement.
right, yeah, there's other increases in several other spots.
I mean, to come up with it, okay, we could piecemeal it, I mean. Cut out some things that I came up with, I mean, we could cut out the $25,000 employee job description pay study. We could eliminate $10,000 from the city administrator pay raise. We already eliminated the $10,000 community funds program, and we could eliminate $3,000 to $4,000 from travel and training. That would only get us to 48 to $56,000.
So we're still doing all that, we're still
We're still 20,000 short.
Well, there's other spots in here. We
So-
can say about.
68 hours a week. I respectfully request that when we talk about cutting the extra.
I can't hear.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I respectfully request that when we talk about cutting the extra services for the sheriff, that we're careful because we're on camera. To say that we are not getting rid of Hood River County Sheriff. They are still bound by our county taxes to respond. And so I think we need to be very careful that we don't say that we are cutting the sheriff. We are cutting an extra contract
Exactly.
that Odell doesn't pay and Parkdale does not pay that extra contract.
So Bernard, can I ask you, do you remember why we started doing this? Why do we, I mean, I know it had to do with the cutting of the timber funds that the county was getting, and that while the county couldn't cut their trees anymore, so then the federal government was reimbursing their money to make up that difference, and then they cut that money, and then somehow we came into play at that point. Do you remember any of that? Do you? 'Cause
I don't, yeah. I don't remember, what kind of sequence of events led to us saying we need to establish an additional service agreement with the sheriff's office to, buttress our law enforcement presence. That was, contract was in place before I started the city, that actually earlier
So
than
that's
May.
a little bit there.
Yeah, or it could have been, I'm not sure how long it's been in place.
I think it was
That
Willow.
come
The
up like-
current contract was written in 2018,
Okay.
2016, but it has been, in some form, it has been in effect, I'd say since the early 2000s, late 90s, maybe longer.
Yeah, that would surprise me. So, yeah, that's the best I can share on that.
I know I mentioned at the last meeting, but I really want to bring to attention to this committee that police presence is really important to the constituents. The last 4 surveys that's been done in the last 3 years, that was fire and police were at the top of the list. So it's not like it's a small group that, just a couple of people have written in. It is every single survey that is very, very important.
Mr. Keller.
So what do we cut?
Yeah.
I feel like I listened to the meeting, even though I wasn't present, I was mentally present. And you guys talked about this for like over an hour, like, do you guys want it or not? And then if you do, like, let's cut. Like, I don't wanna waste my time.
Bernard.
So my suggestion is that we ask the city administrator to sit down with all the general fund services, which is fire, property, those parks. And then they come up with a couple of proposals and then we vote on that. For us to try to go line by line,
Exactly.
it's just it's a exercise in futility, in my opinion. And we really don't know the impacts when you do something, you move these pieces. You need staff to weigh in on this. That would be my suggestion.
And I suggest if we do the budget without the 154,000 factored in, and we see what we have saved for public safety. That Councilman Miller had already brought in Hood River Security, and I know that in my short time in Cascade Box, 2.5 years, twice, the port security was on call when someone got bit at the beach, made that by a dog and made that person wait till the sheriff came. Port security actually stopped a drug affected person banging on my door when they were going up to port property until I called the police to get assistance. So I think public safety is what our people want. And if we can come up with $70,000 to get 24 hours a week of public safety, it might be a nice data catching program to see, has our crime gone up? Are things going down? I think we could get more hours for less money and start to, hopefully folks will go to county commissioner meetings or we contact the county and say, we need, how many hours do you give us for the taxes we already pay? I know it's over 400,000. That's my suggestion, is that we look at the rest of the budget without that, knowing we want public safety money and see how much we can get. Because it sounds like Hood River County Sheriff is non-negotiable, they can't do less than 154,000. And they're meant to serve us anyway.
Connie, did you ever hear that?
Yes.
Good.
I'd like to return to the fact that this is 24 hours a week of presence of a police officer here that writes tickets mostly. And we pay 154,000 out of this year's budget, that's what we would pay. But in a 7-day week, there are 168 hours. We only have 24 hours of presence, so that means we have 144 hours with no presence. And we've been dealing with that by having the sheriff come down here for the extra. At this point, I agree that it's nice, the public safety is an issue, but it's not, this is an extra 154,000 out of the city's budget that I don't think that they can afford to continue doing at this particular time. And that's what you're weighing. If the public wants the presence of additional officers from the sheriff's department, there has to be other ways to pay for it, rather than robbing the city budget.
So, two things, just to be clear on Brian on this conversation. I am not in favor, and respectfully to, my fellow, budget committee members, I'm not in favor of using a private security solution to provide the public safety. I think it's best that you work with the sheriff's office to provide these services. And I can talk more about why, I glanced at it last meeting, but, I do think that's the better solution for us from the big picture and scope of things. What I wanted to ask the city administrator was, so they had to hire this person, right? Is that what I understood?
They said they are in the process of recruiting somebody.
Okay,
If we do not renew this contract, they're gonna close that.
understand. So is it possible we could coordinate with their recruitment and say, we start this person, typically would be 1 July, right? It's the new budget year.
Yeah.
Say, let's start this in September and we could save 2 months. You know what I'm saying? So we make that commitment, but we give them more time to recruit. So we're having a 2-month goal, which we need to save some money. But we're committing, so we know, they know that we're serious about funding this service. And so they're happy, but again, we save some money on the front end. Do you think that's something that they would
What
discuss?
start date did you say?
Sorry, maybe September.
Okay. All right, yeah, I can have that.
I'm just
discussion.
throwing a date out there.
Yeah.
You can do the math. If you take off 2 months off of 12, you just whack your 154 by a 6.
Yeah.
That's a nice chunk of change, So then our numbers aren't as scary as they are, and they buy us time. I emailed the city administrator after the last meeting and kind of gave him, a couple of ideas on how we might shore up our general fund so we can better meet its obligations. But the truth is, we need a bigger, wide-ranging conversation about utilities, and general fund, and all the budget challenges that we're facing in the city. And it needs to be thoughtful, and frankly, you can't do that in 2 meetings, you know? We need to be a more thorough, a process or enter into that. And I feel like if we can kind of just come up with a short-term solution now, that buys us the next 9, 12 months to really go through this thoroughly and do it right and put ourselves back in, the position we should be financially.
Yeah, I mean, assuming all goes to plan, I mean, I'd love to get cost of, service analysis, rate studies done for power, and we did get power for water and sewer. John and I, Chief Logan and I are looking at, increasing EMS fees for right now, and then possibly moving to a public safety levy, which would encompass fire, EMS, and police as a more long-term solution. We're looking at all those options, but yeah, it cannot be resolved in the next week.
Glenn's first.
Just my opinion again about this, we keep mentioning Burnsville and Odell, they're not cities. We're on 24 and at much greater risk than those in the valley. And all of the sheriffs and city officers live in the valley, so those customers have protection all the time. We historically had a police officer living here, and at times we had 2 officers. So since it's number 1 priority with our constituents, citizens, we just need to stop thinking we should, find other ways around it and just make some kind of motion or something to figure out how to fund it by asking these questions.
I think Bernard proposed a good idea.
Yeah, I agree.
Jordan, this is more of a question for you. Do you see anywhere in like the budget as it sits where we could pull this money from?
The easiest way to do it would be cutting a paramedic.
Without doing it, because that's
No,
not an option either.
no.
I
mean, yes, the human resources consultant is, I would say, a luxury, but it needs to be done. We have job descriptions that need to be updated. We have a salary structure that's non-existent. Our staff is severely underfunded. If staff decides to leave, replacing them with quality candidates is gonna be nearly impossible with our current pay range. I mean, not arbitrary amounts, I put this to keep the city functioning properly.
In regards to the HR study, the 25,000, that I agree, it's completely very, very much needed and important. But if it was a choice between police presence and HR study for 25,000, it's not something that's holding up the city from receiving grants. It's not something, it's a helpful tool when it's needed, but it's something that maybe we can get for next year. And then Bernard, I love your creativeness on the 2-month thing. My only concern with that is, well, the sheriffs, we don't know if they would do that, but in the summertime, Cascade Locks is booming. It's the amount of people here in the summer months is so much, and those would be really tough months to not have a police presence.
You're right.
That's my comment.
Fair
It would be
comment.
tough.
I feel like these are, again, all comments that are being rehashed, like. My only thing to add to this is that whether or not you voted for Mr. English, he is an elected position. What, I don't,
What does it have to do with that? I'm waiting for your point to get to the.
because he's an elected position, you don't like him, vote him out. Like, you don't like the service that we're being provided, we go to the county commission and we state that. Why do we, like, I'm piggybacking Connie here, why are we paying $154,000 for the exact same service that Parkdale and Odell get? And Miss Glenn, I don't know how to pronounce your last name, I apologize, but we have 2 state troopers in town that live in Windsong, like. I mean, we still have a police presence in an emergency, they would be here, but. I don't know.
But again, Glenn pointed out, the difference is that we are an incorporated city in Parkdale and Odell are not, but, Bernard.
So the other thing I wanted to explore, so. Our beginning balance at the end of the 2022 year was 238,000. And again, we're behind on those audits and we're assuming it's 130. is there any way you could kind of pigeonhole the auditor to go, okay, I just need the fund balance for the general fund now? And, you know, that could be 170, it could be 200, it might be closer to what it was in 2022 than 130. That would solve a big, or help us in a big chunk.
Yeah,
of way.
knowing exactly that number, yeah, definitely.
So is there some way we can squeeze that,
I
you
can
know,
try.
quicker, you know? I would hate to think that we're just pulling our hair out and we find out our fund balance is 230, you know? It's like, man, that's a lot of anguish when we had the money right there in our fund balance, you know? But we're assuming these conservative numbers based on, I don't know what, you know?
Tony?
I just need a little bit of history. Has Cascade Locks ever had their own police force? I mean, being a city allows us to have a police force. And, you know, 3 officers would give us 120 hours over 144. I mean, is that another option? If people really want this service, there are other ways to have
Okay.
it. So give me the history.
It's this, that has been explored, it was explored when I was on council, and at that time, I don't know how many years ago that was, it was $1 million just for one officer, and you're gonna have the same, you're gonna have the same thing, you're gonna have 24 hours of coverage with 13 hour, 16 hours of travel time and paperwork time. You have to pay for, training, you have to pay for equipment, you have to pay, yeah, that's for one thing, and that's just not gonna, you're gonna have the same thing, and you're gonna be paying,
Insurance,
way
vehicles,
more, 10
weapons,
times more
you
than what
know,
we are now.
it is not
So,
cheap,
and I mean,
unfortunately.
So it was just, and then we were also watching at the same time that we were exploring it, we were watching North Bonneville trying to do their own police force, and that turned out to be an utter disaster for them, and it was an expensive disaster. So it was like, it's just unaffordable. I mean, it would be a serious bond, a levy that we would have to do. Jordan?
Carl had his hand up. I didn't know if you noticed it.
Oh, okay, well, did anybody else have any discussion on that?
Just to answer a question,
Okay, go ahead.
John Harvey, didn't John Harvey know his grandfather was a city cop here? Back like in the 60s, maybe the 60s. So
Yeah.
irrelevant, but the answer is yes, he did.
Same on the same discussion?
Yes, but kind of tying back to the fund balance, our reconciliations are current. So if our reconciliations are current, then our audit should be there shouldn't be a huge discrepancy there. Maybe Carl can, yeah, he's giving us thumbs up on that. So, you know, it's really more of the financial stamp saying that it's been audited, but our reconciliations are current. So I don't expect we're gonna have a big variance in our fund balances. The thing that irks me though about our coverage 24 hours a week. Well, one, it's on 24 hours a week, but then 16 hours a week, for everyone's like commute time, they got an office here, but they don't use it. And it seems like majority of the time they're just sitting there writing traffic tickets, and that doesn't feel like, you know, they're getting revenue again from the traffic tickets they're writing. And it just seems like a waste of, we're just paying for a traffic cop. I don't feel like it's really hitting the main needs of the community when we've got, vehicle break-ins occurring at the hotel. We've got drug houses in town, you know, so there are things I think that are a different priority for the community than what seems like it's a priority for the sheriff's office. But back to Mr. Keller's comment, and Mr. Bennett pushed all of us on council to do this as well, show up to the city council, or not the city, the county meetings and voice our concerns and frustrations. But I really think we need to make our voices heard. And I was wondering, what if we could recruit somebody that actually lived in town? Would we be able to get 40 hours a week out of them as opposed to?
They have to get to work and travel, because Norcor is, you know, it's a ways away.
Do we have any data on before we had 24 hours of extra paid sheriff? Has our crime gone down from before we had that? I don't think there's data to support $150,000 we don't have. When I do think private security, many cities do it. I've shared some research with a few folks in town, and you can research on your own, because I shared last week, the only one that I got a quote from was 8 hours a night, 7 days a week would be 120,000 with armed, uniformed officers, retired veterans in patrol cars that were well marked. And that, I just asked what that, they could do other timeframes for less, but if our community wants more public safety patrol at night, I think we can't afford, yes, a sheriff is a great thing, but there's so many great things we cannot afford. Our fire chief, if you ever look at the average pay, the fire chief's making half. And we can't even find money, you know, to keep the #1 public service agency in our town well funded, and that's breaking my heart.
Yeah, but,
I think Jason Carl.
yeah, let's let Carl go and then I have comments to make.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Carl, you had your hand up, I think you texted me a comment about the beginning fund balances.
Right. Yeah, I took notes. I was trying to interject earlier. My apologies. Beginning balances, I mean, unfortunately, the beginning balances per fund are kind of like the argument we had a week ago, where, you know, each fund gets revenues and expenses. And overall, you still have to look at the cash available and what the expenditures overall for the city are. And I'm sorry, but I agree with Mr. Bennett, but it seems to be that we have a shortcoming of revenue and expenses are picking up. I'm not going to be the person who wants to make a suggestion right now in this meeting to start moving funds between funds, but I think, again, we're behind on the audit. What the auditors used to do was provide a beginning balance for each fund, and that hasn't been done for quite a while. But the more I learn about the accounting and how this works, it's not that difficult. It's just revenues and expenses on each fund. Whether or not we meet budget, unfortunately, is not how it works. And we're I don't want to say we're going blind. We're not. We still have money in the account. Budget is working well. We can look at that on a monthly basis every month. And Jordan is really good at looking at what are we doing on a monthly basis versus what we didn't need to project for the future. And that's what scares me.
Can you say that again? That last statement?
I really like what the city manager is doing in saying we have some issues right now in terms of revenues are less than expenses. And it's scary because going forward, that is not going to work. And he's trying to be reasonable about trying to figure out what do we cut or what do we raise revenue for? I really want the council to look forward to the auditors who are looking forward to presenting to you results of the audit for the fiscal year of 2021 to 2022. And once we have that, and we're probably a month away, then we'll finally have some beginning balances. But again, it's not magic. It's just moving available funds from one fund to another. That does not fix anything in terms of the overall amount of funds that the city has available.
Right.
Okay, so. Just so I'm clear, maybe you should explain it, but I just misunderstood it. So I hear these reconciliations are up to date. So where do we get the 130?
That's after all the expenses projected through June, that's what we're projected to have, 130.
Based on these up to date reconciliations?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'd like to argue, I mean, we can't afford, you're saying we can't afford $154,000 for the contract. But have we paid $180,000 for accounting?
Not this fiscal year, no.
Is that, what is the $180,000 that we have budgeted? I don't remember, I'm sorry, it's been a long couple of days. How, do you know how much off the, have we spent on accounting?
This fiscal year, probably 120, definitely more than I anticipated.
Okay, so 120, and the position that we're eliminating was 70,000. I mean, so we overspent, there's an area that we've overspent. I understand we have to get our people, we have to get that in place. At the same time, I have concerns with this general fund because, again, Monday you said that the sewer department was in trouble, yet, you know, they're paying admin personnel, they're paying materials and services, but you have the EMS department not paying for either one of those. And you're gonna be asking for most likely an increase on the fee that we're paying now. I mean, so how can you genuinely represent to the community that this department needs more money if we're not making them pay for the things that every other department's paying for?
Which department?
EMS, fire and EMS. You're not having them do admin or materials and services. And you're gonna ask the citizens later on this year for an increase in that fee that they're paying, which could cover the admin and I don't know, everything should be represented equally in this budget, so I just don't know how, as a council, you're going to be able to say to the citizens, we need this extra amount of money when it's not even being reflected here in your own budget. So, I mean, I don't,
So the other funds are not subsidized by the general fund. The general fund is giving $331,000 to the fire department, making them pay administrative fee. It's an endless loop of the general fund giving the money to the fire department, which then gives it to general fund and gives it back. It's invisible money. There's no way to make it work.
but you say, and the sewer department now is in trouble, you said on Monday night, correct?
Yes.
Yes, I mean,
Yes, but it can generate its own revenue. It should be generating its own revenue. Sewer fund, the sewer rate has not increased in 20 years.
okay, so I think we're gonna go with Bernard's recommendation, is that? That
They craft a proposal.
yes. Did you have more to say?
Yeah, so two of the things. One, as much as I acknowledge the city manager's point on, they're both general fund sources for both our general fund and fire EMS. I get it. My bias is to have them pay their overheads, so the community, so the public sees what deficit that fire and EMS is running on its own behalf. By any accounting standard, it has overhead. And the fact that it's not represented in its budget, you go, well, it's not so bad. No, it is bad because we're hiding that thing. So in the final analysis, I do think that's where we should eventually be, so the public understands why this is such a challenging service to fund. Okay, so I want to say that. The second thing is, as I look at the actuals, so if you look at the 2023 actual, so at the end of 6/30/2023, we spent $862, okay? What was our budget for twenty twenty-three. Do we know where that is? Is that? You see what I'm asking?
What line are we looking at?
I'm on the first page of the general fund, kind of on the revenues.
The revenues.
Yeah, so if you go to 22-23 actuals, you can see we did 862. That was, we actually spent for the fiscal year 22-23.
So, yeah, no, 862 in revenue.
I'm sorry, okay, what did we spend the actual for 22-23? What was the actual expenditure?
Well, so the actual total revenue, including the overhead fees, was 1,407,000.
Okay, and then what did we actually spend for 22-23?
Actual expenses. Backwards, now, which one did I- one was 1,425,000.
So we had a delta of, what, like 45,000?
44,000, yeah.
Okay. And then for 23-24, what does that number look, what is the delta then? Actual versus budget,
Actual,
yeah.
at 130.
But
Okay.
that's, we still have a month and a half left, so
Yeah, we're assuming there'll be 130 left in the fund at the end of this fiscal year.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, okay. All right, well, I was in a similar pickle, you know, in your job. And after we did some budget analysis with Mary Ann, and what we realized that in many of our budget years, we weren't coming close to spending what our revenues were presenting, right? So there was this big gap. And so I'm starting to, I was gonna say, well, there's money there, because we're just not spending it on it, So that's one way you can wiggle, but it looks like we're pretty close.
We're
Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
So the one alternate that, I don't know, people know where I stand on the private security solution, but I'm asking the budget committee, should we have the city manager provide basically, two proposals? Proposal one is we fund the sheriff's office at either 154 or 5/6 of 154. We find out if that's possible. And then option two is we fund public safety at like 70 at a smaller amount. You know what I'm saying? Those are two options that we could maybe see. Again, I am not for the security, but I would want to know if the consensus is we should analyze both of those scenarios. I don't know how everyone else feels. I know how you feel.
Right, I agree with that, but because there's a lot of things that would be nice if we paid extra for. A planner, on staff, economic development department, human resources department, we don't have the money. We don't have the money for an extra sheriff's service. And we should be given that sheriff's service. I've lived in Welch's, Oregon, which had only Clackamas County Sheriff. I've lived in parts of Portland that only had sheriff. And in both cases, well, in the Portland area, we had private security to make up for that patrol difference. And I have some data on the presence of a patrol car reduces, one that I shared recently with somebody with a catalytic converter and break-ins. So more patrol for less money. It would be interesting. And if we got data, were they patrolling? Was Hood River County Sheriff patrolling before we paid extra? And did they just stop giving us that patrol hours because we were paying extra?
I don't know if that number is gonna be assessing one, because I don't think we've ever with them without.
We've always paid for extra?
It's been at least probably 30 years. Yeah.
So that number, that's just.
That was a different time.
I mean, the town would be completely different.
Different.
Traffic and business and tourism.
Yeah.
And the idea that we're incorporated in Odell and Parkdale aren't, doesn't make sense that we would still have less patrol because we have more expenses because we're incorporated. And so that doesn't make sense to me, and the figure that you shared, we give $400,000 for.
It's population based. The city of Hood River is 8,000. We're 1,400. The rest of the incorporated county, which is that whole South Hill, is the other 15,000, whatever that number is.
More.
Or more. They're gonna be in the population center, and that is Parkdale and Odell. That's where the sheriff's department is gonna patrol. Something is more likely to happen there than here. That's it. That's gonna be the rationale as to why they're in Parkdale and not Cascade Locks.
But the rationale of 84 and crossing the state lines, it means things might happen here.
Yeah, they're not.
Doesn't.
They're not.
Sure, did you?
Yeah, I did. I do agree with Bernard, we need to find, like, if we're gonna do this, like, if we're gonna even like attempt to get this $154,000 and we're gonna squeeze and wiggle, I don't think we should compromise on a paramedic. So that's, I just wanted to make sure that, like, we can touch a lot of other things, but we shouldn't try to touch that. And in going back to what Bernard was saying with the whole invisible, with the fire department not paying its the overhead because it's basically just not paying this general fund, which would pay that excess anyway, isn't affected by that number. Because technically you paid in and then all that money that just got paid in and some more goes back in, then we might as well just do that just to show the number. Cause it's just for showing the number, it's not for anything else. That's not really a budget changer, cause the money that comes out of there goes right back into it. That's where I'm at, because if we're gonna even think about trying to make this work, then we need to know that. And then if that's not working, I also like the idea of having a lesser amount for public safety, whatever that might include. I like the idea of having a sheriff here, but if people just want less break-ins and stuff, a security guard driving down your street who's told to drive up and down every street throughout the night is probably gonna do a better job of deterring break-ins than a sheriff sitting on Wampum.
Denise,
Who does the accounting when we ask the fire department to pay? And when they don't have that money to pay those fees, is there a budget it comes out of? Is there a contingency fund? When we say we wanna show it on paper, how many hours a month are we asking someone to pay attention to juggling money? And where does that pot get juggled from?
To process the admin fees,
Yeah,
so it would had been the finance officer, so it would be the Carl, the contracting CFO.
would be
Would be the,
processing,
yeah, doing all the back end accounting, yes.
when ongoing with the fire department, let's say we say, yes, please. Here's the amount you're meant to pay for admin fees, somebody needs to put that in and say, we don't have the money, so then what happens? When they say we don't have the money and they put it in.
Carlos, go ahead, Carl, you have an answer?
It's nothing that Jordan can answer as well. It's a predetermined fee that we budget for every fiscal year. It's a certain percentage based upon receipts. And Mr. Logan found a great resource to do something a little bit different in terms of recovering money, which is through a company called Tactical, and they take care of all the Medicare billings through EMS. And we use that third-party provider to get the city to recover the funds from the expenditures used through EMS. Jordan, do you have anything to add to that? I'm not sure if
I
I'm
guess
asking.
not getting your question.
My question is, they do not pay overhead costs due to their lack of funds. Some folks are saying, no, they need to pay overhead costs. So. How much times each month do they say, here's the overhead costs, we can't pay? Is it just a big red negative that goes every month? Or because people want to see that? Because certainly, I do not want anybody working at the fire department to make any less than they are making in order to pay this now, something that we used to give them for free.
I
So
misunderstood
what
the
happens?
question. I'm sorry.
How does that, how do we show that cost and loss, and how do they
Well,
get through
I
the
mean,
year?
it goes back to Councilor Compton's point, it is kind of an in and out, it's whatever that fee would be covered by general fund, be just a big circle.
Because the EMS fund is funded by the general fund.
Right, yeah, so the
then
amount,
the admin fees are then charged back to the, the money then gets charged to the EMS fund, and the money gets put back into the general fund, so it's just circular is what.
yeah,
Does that make sense?
so yeah, I guess I misspoken, it's not that they can't afford it, but it's just a big circle between the EMS fund and the general fund. So we can put it back in there.
Does it make them look like they're running at a loss then?
A greater loss.
They just make it look like they need more money from the general fund to be supported.
So we need to budget that in.
We can do that, yes.
It doesn't change the numbers are still the numbers, we still have the same amount of bills, we still got the same amount of revenue.
Yeah.
But it more maybe to Bernard's point, and I think some of the other people that are on the budget review committee, it's more accurate accounting.
Well, you can't go to the citizens and say, they're not making any money, but we aren't charging them certain amounts of money so that you can see that they aren't making any money.
Because not quite.
Hold on, Kelly, you had your hand a little bit.
Two things. I feel like all we're trying to do is just juke the stats. to see-
Understand, we're getting to a close.
No, to make the fire department seem, or the EMS and the fire department seem more needy in fund. I think that's what we're trying to do. Secondly, my question was, a long time ago. Is there a way to look at how many calls our 24-hour guy participates in versus the calls that he doesn't participate in? Is that?
They've got that data, yeah.
Sure.
The calls he takes while he's actually in Cascade
Yeah.
blocks.
So
Yeah,
24 hours, how many calls does he take versus the calls overall?
yeah, I can ask the sheriff, I don't have that handy, but I can ask.
It's hard to know because he starts his time as soon as he gets into town, so everything that he does here in town is part of his 24 hours.
So if you made a phone call, he would count that as a 24 hours.
Sure, part of that 24 hours.
If it was high enough priority.
Yeah, so
Yes.
last month, there was 150 calls or interactions, how many of those happened that weren't traffic stops? So it'd be 150 minus 70 is 80, I can't do math, so of those 80 calls, how many of them actually happened during his patrol in Cascade blocks, is that what you're asking? I can attempt to figure that out.
And then my other question is, are they counting any time in Cascade blocks, are they counting that, or is it that specific 24 hours that gentleman has?
Anytime they come into the Cascade Lock service area
For
or
any
patrol
call, any
area.
reason,
Yep,
they start the clock, they start the little clock watch.
Yep.
And then as soon as they leave, they stop the stopwatch.
correct, even if they're just driving on through to Portland for some reason.
So if we didn't actually contract with them, then we would get their time here for free.
Well, I mean, we're.
We're paying for the property tax, but we're not gonna be, the double taxation that we're talking about.
So I mean, I did the math, their April report. That we just got last week, they had a total of 74 patrols in Cascade Locks. For a total of 131 hours. That is 4.38 hours per day, or 1.78 hours per patrol. So I'm gonna guess some of those were probably a lot less than 1.78 hours, and some of them were probably a lot longer than 1.78. But that was the number of patrols was 74, so a little over 2 patrols per day, averaging under 2 hours per patrol.
Can I continue real quick?
Yes, sorry.
I believe and I would have to ask Mr. English or whatever, I believe that Cascade Locks under the sheriff's department starts at milepost 56 with Viento.
No, I think it's the actual city limits, which is about,
Incorporated like,
Like the island.
Yeah.
There, don't you?
yeah,
Basically, the first and last exits.
47, I think,
Yes.
yeah.
So I want to clarify, when I called the sheriff, because there was a drug affected person at my door. The minute they got to Cascade Locks, does that count for patrol?
That is a patrol.
So because I call, that counts.
Counts for a contract.
It counts as a patrol, but they're, yeah, whether it counts towards their 24-hour minimum, I don't know how they track that internally.
I would like to know that as well, because they should do that from our original county tax.
Yeah. Because that's always been my argument, because a lot of the times we were paying for them to make. Traffic stops on the highway, because part of the highway is within your city limits. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, we have a conundrum of.
I don't have that granular data. I wish I did.
Karen, did you have, you had?
Well, I'm just thinking we need to move on.
I get that.
It's more about a decision that needs to be at a higher level than the budget.
Agreed, we have, let's keep it short, you two.
Okay. The top jet, hey.
Go ahead.
So just two things. The reason that I'm very much an advocate of the accounting piece on the EMS is that, you know, when you're talking to members of the public and say, hey, we need to raise the EMS charge from 6 to 650 or whatever, they want to know, well, how much does it cost to run fire? And if you don't show but overhead, you're not being realistic and accurate on what it costs to run fire. Because overhead is a real thing that every city on the planet budgets for, regardless of the service. So I just really hope we'll do that. The other thing on the police, you know, I would love for us to have a conversation with the sheriff's office. You have folks saying, well, he just sits there and Waterpond writes tickets, and the others say, he should be driving around. You know, I generally leave it to the professionals to say, they're the best ones qualified to quote, keep us safe. If they have determined through their analysis and police work that driving around the town on a regular basis will keep us safer than sitting on Waterpond writing tickets, then I generally trust them, but I think those are fair questions. Let's get them in here and ask them, like, why is it better on public safety for you not to drive around? Those are fair questions. Let's ask them. And then I think that we might learn something, you know?
Tammy.
Okay, mine's only to sheriff, so. I think we need to figure out what we can cut and what we can't and get a number that we're short for that 154,000. Do the math, what we have to put on the ballot to make that 154,000. Put it on the ballot. Have the sheriff's office come out to our town meeting before people vote. If it doesn't pass, then we look at private security to help. But we let the residents decide, we work for the residents. Thank you.
I agree, but we have to do the budget before that.
That's true. Sure. All right, so. Is your direction clear?
That's what I was just gonna ask, so.
Clear it was.
I guess an analysis of the entire general fund budget, not just administration. To where we can make cuts, to see if we can get law enforcement in this current year, is that a directive?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the second option was security.
Well, again, don't point to me. I'm not favored that.
You made that suggestion, I would have.
I think she would want
I
it.
just wanted to.
But what is the rest of the folks? Do we want to have this administrator for that analysis?
Just one. I mean, I guess if we get the one direction, we'll get the second direction, or we'll get close to the.
Well, I think I'm in agreement, but I think it, I would like to have more information so we can make an educated decision. And I don't,
For what? For what specifically?
to get the private security, and compare apples to oranges. Does that make sense? You follow me?
Okay.
That was what Bernard's recommendation was, not here going with public safety, but at least getting a bid for that option.
Was that here?
Well, I think that needs to be a part of it. Absolutely. We need to understand what that figure is.
And apples to apples, Did you mention that 70,000 a year was for 40 hours a week?
No, I meant that 120 a year was for 7 days a week, 8 hours a night. That was one company, Cascadia, that called me back. I know Councilman Miller had spoken to Hood River Security, which might be less because they're closer. I don't know if we get a bid from them. I don't know.
So
Yeah, so that takes-
apples to apples, so maybe a bid for 26 hours a week and 7 days a week would be nice. We could get it for a lot less than the deputy.
Okay, but here's the concern though, we're in the budget process, we're not, that's a council, that's gonna be a council thing, and we're not gonna be able to get that determination within the 1 to 2 weeks we have left on this budget to get that done, so I mean, that's something we'll give direction to council at the end of our budget process here, but sure.
I was just gonna say, kind of, but we need a number on the budget. And so what I was going to propose is we go with 5, 6 to 154,000 and see if they're open to, I like the idea of starting in September to give them a little more time for the head on, and that reduces the, I think it was 28,000, I can't remember what they got to. But I think it might make it, and then if we end up going with private security and it's less money, then that's actually just extra money in the general fund, right? But budget high, then we can just, go the other way. I think.
Okay.
This is directed, I just want to reiterate,
Okay.
we are not trying to cut EMS.
Don't do that. No, we are not.
Yeah. No cutting EMS.
Okay, all right, so let's move on to SDC, number 2, which is tab number 7. There's not a whole bunch there.
Yeah, I gotta find my little notes I made now. But yeah, this one's pretty straightforward. So this is the fee to join the services for the city, hooking up to water, water and sewer. And then a parks fee as well. You never know what's gonna be built in town, so there's really no way to even have a remote guess of what's coming in. Yes, we have the 45 new homes coming in, but we could have 1 built, we could have 45 built in the next year. It's impossible. If we get money, fantastic. Great, and then the expenses are for actual capital improvements to those systems. So funds for the water SCC will go to improving the water system and et cetera. So really, it's kind of the holding place.
What is the Parks and Rec system development?
It's a good question. We have it, we don't really have a parks program, we don't have a parks, capital plan, we have Overlook Park, and that's it. What it was initially intended for, I do not know the history.
See if it says it in last year's notes.
Is there actually $44,000 in it?
Yeah,
Okay, so in last year's notes, it just says revenue from development in the city dedicated to the parks and recreation system, so do we have our own?
Yeah,
We really-
we could switch this.
Well, because we're not part of Hood River County. so-
Yeah.
correct. I don't know the history of that started because when we left the Hood River County one in the 80s, I don't know the history.
And there doesn't look like there's gonna be any parks built by the city in the near future.
No,
No.
So I would say we should cut that $44,000 and put it into police services.
we can't, yeah, those ORS is stating it has to be spent on parks development.
Yeah.
We cannot do it.
Correct. That's one of those sticky points.
Yeah. So if we wanna upgrade Overlook Park, we have to come up with a capital improvement plan first, and then we can spend it on that plan.
All these plans we hate spending money on.
We can't have a sheriff at Overlook Park.
I like your thinking that, all right.
Okay, any more discussion on that? All right, let's move on to tab 10, grants.
My notes here. What am I doing?
You put paperwork out for everybody else and you don't have your own paperwork?
Well, I was not expecting us to get the grants. I figured we do public works stuff first, so I didn't know how far we were gonna get tonight.
Yeah.
But I don't think it changed too much from the initial public funds review, so let me pull that out really quick.
Do we have a new line, this DLCD comp plan update, grant, is that a new?
No,
There was nothing in front last year and this looks like it's the first year for this.
no, it's an old line used for previous DLCD plans, so we're just reusing
Okay,
that
so it
line.
doesn't need the word new.
No.
Okay.
Let me see here.
That would in a few minutes to find.
There we go, yep, so you will see the ODOT Small Cities Allotment Grant budgeted for 23-24 did not materialize, so that did not happen. The Oregon DOE grant was awarded, but the funds have not been released yet. We'll hopefully get them in the 24-25 fiscal year. The city is still waiting to hear back from FEMA on the grant budgeted for 23-24, so it's again in 24-25. Hopefully we get it. The ODO and FEMA grants are for the replacement of the roof and installation of a generator, solar panel, and battery here at City Hall. The projects cannot go forward unless both grants are awarded. If the FEMA grant is awarded, the city will need to return or I guess officially not accept the FEMA or the ODO funds, but they are budgeted in case we do get them. The city has been awarded a grant from the Oregon Department of Land Conservation and Development. The funds will be released in 24-25 and are set to be used for the University of Oregon's Institute for Policy Research and Engagement to help the city develop a downtown revitalization plan. There is that beginning fund balance of $100,000 that is a mystery at this point, and that's one of the projects I'd like to work with Carl to figure out, is that money there? Is it real? What grant was it supposed to go to? And so we can get it off of our books.
Do you have any ideas for that?
I don't, but he seems to be giving me a thumbs up regarding some.
That they're looking into that. I think
The auditors are obviously going to ask that question, so I should have an answer for you in probably a month.
Oh, awesome.
That's for the 102 contingency, and then what is that one? Specific-
That's the unknown beginning fund balance, and I just put it in contingencies. Yeah. I have what's on there.
Any questions? All right, then let's move on to tab 11, tourism.
I'm actually Janice Crane, our tourism support staff is online. I'm gonna let her take the lead. She worked with the tourism committee to craft this, this budget. Is kind of more, I don't know the word, it's a little more detailed than what has been done in the past. So Janice, if you want to take the lead. If she's there.
She might have stepped away.
I think she was traveling, so she may not.
You're leading.
You wanna check the chat, she might have chatted you something.
No, two things.
Okay.
Yeah. She did say she was, oh, I saw her mic go off and on.
What about just skipping this and coming back?
Yeah, I should say, can we come back to
Okay,
it? Yeah.
okay, let's move on to electric. Tab 15.
Yeah.
All right, so just like last year, split into two separate, funds within the fund, City Light and then South Bank. Go back through here. Quick look.
Gonna go after Henry if he wants a special drink or not.
What was that, John?
I don't think he meant to unmute.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to unmute. I'm trying to multitask and take care of children.
No. I do have some questions, and do you have a report to give on this?
No.
Okay, so, do we have an average and a peak that we're or how much we're using, how much electricity we're using, an average? We usually,
Its average is still the same, 4 and 7. There's about 4.4 is the average, and then probably 7.5 is the peak.
and is there an update on the BPA power station?
Yes, so we have paid for the substation. They took the money on Monday the 6th. We are waiting for the county to record the deed, and we will get a copy of it, so we should have ownership of it here in the next couple days.
And the cost for that was
250,
250,000.
yes.
Also, do you know how much our power loss is now? Usually, get that kind of report with the.
I don't know.
Something, okay, so I see a couple of problems, on the contract servicing engineering. On page 1, on the second or third bracket of numbers there. Is that for moving the, there you go. Moving the power lines, is that for moving the power lines in South Bank? Does that have anything to do with that? Have the increase? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Why so much more this year? Why are we expecting something?
I need to look at my notes. I do not remember off the top of my head.
Is that to clarify that's we're going from 100,000 to 200,000? Is that the same line item that I'm looking at?
No, contract service engineering, we're going from 300 to 550,000.
To 900%.
Yeah, it's like a huge increase. What is?
Well, from 5,000 to 55,000 budget.
Give it, you.
It's 50,000.
Is that for the McCord Creek project?
No.
That's what I was asking.
I'm sorry, Jordan, I should kick in here, but I can't remember either. I thought we spoke about this previously. I don't remember why.
Is it the new electrical that's coming in, the new
Nope.
substation?
Nope.
And then contract service miscellaneous, it's up 100%.
Yeah, that too.
I have to go back and talk to Derek. I don't remember. I honestly didn't think we'd be talking about it tonight. I thought we would go the order that was presented Monday or last week. So my apologies there.
Okay, so, and then my other issue that I have, I can finish, this, on the second page, the special public works loan repayment, that is for the moving of the power lines?
No, that one is for the substation.
Okay, so that,
Yes, there's 2 loans we're gonna pay back with any electric department. The special public works one is the last little bit of funding needed to buy the substation and upgrade it. And then the other loan is the $1 million for the McCord Creek Bridge relocation.
okay, and where is that in this, where is that in this?
But one thing I want to bring up, I realized that the actual receivable and spending of the money I did not put in my proposal. So I want to put it in.
Because that should be in Southland. Because that is debt that is being taken on to provide power to Southland. It is not the city, it's not city like debt.
Where'd it go?
Which, again, it'll be the same, it's,
Yes.
it's gonna be the same problem.
Yeah.
With the fire EMS and.
Yeah,
It's
so-
gonna accurately reflect.
Yeah,
Where the debt is, because then at the city light, the citizens of Cascade Locks are augmenting South Bank to be able to provide them power.
yeah, so the receivable of the loan would be South Bank reimbursable projects. Where it would go,
So it's not in here yet.
not in here, no, I had the payment of the loan in there, but not the actual receivable of the funds, so
Okay,
totally,
That was a mistake then.
yes, yeah, so,
okay,
yeah.
these pages will need to be updated before we can
Yep,
really do
yeah,
much of anything.
Yeah, so it'll be in South Bank reimbursable projects for the revenue, and then the expense will come out of South Bank capital projects, materials and services. The very last one before contingency. Or yeah, very last one before the loan payment. And then the loan payment is scheduled for $55,780 per year.
So that,
That one is on here, isn't it?
The loan payment, yes.
Yeah, the loan
But
payment.
the actual receivable of the loan money and the expenses of for the project. Totally,
So is
yeah,
that?
Right, right, which nets to zero. It's 750 in, 750 out, so the net difference is zero, correct?
yes,
Should be.
yeah, and then it won't have effect on any of the admin, because admin does not do capital projects. Only the actual materials and services.
Okay, so this isn't gonna change the, self-injection net total.
I mean, it'll change, the net total will go up $1 million, but it won't change any operating within it.
That's correct.
Okay, so I think I'm gonna have to be able to see that in order to be able to, because it's, again, it's kind of a.
Yeah, my apologies there.
Big little mess. Bernard, did you have anything?
Yeah, so if I could, so my brain was thinking that we would finish the general fund and then start what we didn't get done last meeting, then start kind of the.
Yeah,
fun thing
well,
too.
but he changed the order, I mean, this is the agenda.
Well,
that we
the
got.
first item says what wasn't discussed. Okay, the previous.
So is it possible we can go back to last week's and hit those funds? Sorry for, because that's kind of what I geared up with, I got.
I didn't hear, I didn't know we needed, we're close to this.
Right, okay, well, oh, okay.
You sure I'm asking? If we
Yeah,
go to
okay.
the agenda from the last week, we'll have those funds that we did not touch. Because we got stuck on this.
Well, but we have.
Oh, so-
Yeah. But we have tourism here, so let's let her go. Let's let her.
Yeah.
do
Go back
whatever.
to section, what was that? Thank you. Tab 11.
Sorry, I decided that was the beginning of this weekend, completely.
Thank you for being.
Okay, so explain your budget.
Yeah, so the budget you have in front of you, includes a lot more dividing up of the expenses and a lot more labeling. So in previous tourism budgets, they were big lump sums that had very generic fund names. And I think in the interest of engendering better public trust and making sure that we're accounting for everything correctly, I want to make sure that we're allocating into actually, you know, being accountable and responsible for what the funding is that we have and how we're spending it. So it looks a lot different from how it has in previous years. The revenue streams are all pretty much the same because they're based on a percentage of TLT. And we, as the tourism committee, are responsible for 30% of that total. And so when Jordan projected the total, we took that 30% and said, okay, cool, this is where our budget starts because it's a set percentage of something that was established beyond our control. The new accounts include some grants that we will apply for. So the committee is going to undertake strategic planning this year so that we actually, you know, are developing our destination and stewarding Cascade Box in a way that's responsible and well planned and thought out. So they have gone ahead and established a 1-year transitional plan so that they can get into actual strategic planning. So applying for grants to bring in consultants to do that process with them is a new revenue stream for tourism.
Advertising sales.
Yeah, advertising.
Advertising sales is something that was already happening. It was just getting categorized under miscellaneous income. So there are 2 different projects that tourism undertakes where they do sell advertising. It's a co-op ad in one of the magazines and then the poster at Multnomah Falls. We receive revenue for that at cost. So because it has to balance out with the expense line, it needs to be accounted for correctly in the revenue line. So they need to match. So we spend $2,000 on a poster at Multnomah Falls and we charge 10 businesses $200 each to have an ad on that poster. It's going to be in the revenue and in the expenses. And then there are 2 new expense accounts that are on here, and those are, again, just about better categorizing the spending that we're doing. So breaking out the contract services instead of just leaving it all as miscellaneous or all as generically tourism support. I want to account for what we're actually doing. So are we getting grant writing services? Are we doing administrative services? So that I think it'll be less confusing for everybody if we have an expanded revenue.
I appreciate you breaking it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bernard,
So maybe this question is for Mary Ann, I don't know if she's still listening. And or our finance officer. But in the search for general fund dollars, I'm curious, can we charge an overhead fee to the tourism fund? It feels like we collect their transient room tax. You know, I'm sure the attorney reviews things occasionally. I know the city administrator has to work with Janice and there's overhead there. Is there a way we could charge them an overhead for that and again, create a little more general fund revenue? Mary Ann, have you ever done that before?
Not to my knowledge, I haven't seen any record of it.
But if I'm seeing the CFO, that's might be possible. There's not an ORS that says you can't charge your transient room, you know, or your tourism department and overhead. Am I hearing that correctly?
Carl, I'd like to hear your comment on that.
I am so sorry. I don't know the details of that and I can't opine.
Okay, well, I'd like to look into it.
I need to say, we don't have a tourism department. It's a committee. And Janet is an independent paid consultant for the museum. It's not a department.
Understand, but they do things, we can see. They oversee contracts, there's work being done here.
But it's not a staff, a city of Cascade Locks department. It's a committee. Are we gonna start charging the planning commission?
It's a fund.
It is
And
a
the
fund.
thought is that each fund would pay its own administrative fees.
I remember Mary Ann spent a lot of time chasing down delinquent transient room tax, you know, hotel motel operators.
That's done by.
That's overhead, guys, you know, that's a real thing that she had to do. Who's paying for that? That should be,
The state does.
state does it now, apparently.
oh, do they?
Yeah.
Okay, so we just get a check.
Yep.
Oh, that's a little easier. Like I said, if there's wiggle room, I think we should explore it.
I just want to clarify, you guys get 30% of the TLT funds, the other 70% goes to the general fund already.
Correct.
That's,
I know, trust me, I know.
Appreciate you want to be creative.
That's the goal.
Is that something you want a consensus on to be looked into, or?
You know, I'd love to know what the number would be, and if it's worth it, then I think we should consider it, but if it's a small enough number, then, you know, I'll trust the city administrator to say it's worth our effort.
Got that, Jordan? It's like he's looking at.
It'd be 41,000, yeah.
41,000.
You don't have to do it on the spot.
Yeah.
Just
And is
something
there-
I'd like to look into.
Is there room in the budget for that, or they have to pay that?
And that's how that is working.
Yeah.
So,
That's all I have. Sure.
something that we want to look into, or?
I just on that, like, how much does staff do overhead work for that committee? Cause it feels like it wouldn't be a lot, because they're relatively intensive.
You contract out most of your administrative services to us, and so that overhead is coming from those contract fees for a lot of it.
We pretty much process EP for accounts payable. That's the biggest thing the city does for the tourism fund.
Which is something, but
Yeah, how many hours a month would that come to?
Maybe. Maybe it's a busy month as they prep for summer, maybe, but. We get a couple checks a month related to tourism.
I would hate to charge them more than we're doing. if we went that direction.
Right, there's one. Anyone else? I just want to say thank you, because I appreciate, sometimes when changes are made, there's pushback, like this is the way we've always done it, and it's, but I really like the goals in mind of increasing the transparency and making it more clear about where the revenue is coming from and where you're spending it, so thank you for that.
Thank you for talking to me, even though apparently it wasn't on the agenda, even though it was, but.
I think I said I was going after Olympics, so I thought I was your own
Thank you for coming. Thank you.
All right, so I guess then we are going to go back to streets, which is tab 8. For next week's meeting.
Thank you, Janice.
Thank you.
So was there consensus to explore assessing an admin fee to it?
No.
No,
I don't think so.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So streets fund, operating revenue expenses for 2024-2025. Street fund will be nearly identical to 23-24. The state gasoline tax share is expected to have a modest increase of 8%. Budgeted personnel and material and services expenses will stay static. The department has historically not used the funds set aside for engineering unless absolutely necessary. As the entire city shifts to looking beyond the next 12 months, the street department will work with our contracted engineer, planner, and now CFO to develop a capital improvement plan for the streets of Cascade lots. So the third item down in streets, materials, and services, the contracted services engineers budgeted 5,000, has always been 5,000. We've used $467 the last 3 years. Plan to actually use that money this year to develop a comprehensive street replacement plan. That's the plan. The street fund will be paying off an outstanding debt as well. The city incurred a cost of engineering design for railroad crossing upgrade at Kerman Creek. The cost was to be covered by the ODOT Small Cities Allotment Grant that the city was awarded in 2001. Is any additional, let's see here, the project kept increasing in scope and cost, outgrew the funds from ODOT and any additional funds the city had available at the time. The city had to give the grant funds back because the city was unable to complete the project that the funds were provided for. However, the city was still owes the engineer for the work to complete. We originally got $100,000 to do the project and started engineering, and then we got to a cost of about $500,000 to actually do the project, and we had to back out. So we still owe Tennyson Engineering $28,850.
From 2001.
From work done, yeah, before I got, yeah. They have been very kind in not getting mad at us. Yes, so I want to pay it off and get it off the books.
Any questions? Okay,
I guess, well, this proposed budget, I'm sorry, does not have, there will be a little bit of change in the admin, so that will be updated. I'll come back at the end with the approved column updated with all these numbers for this committee to have a final look and approve before sending it to council. So if we go back to find it down. Where did you go? The overhead spreadsheet I had in the packet today.
I was wondering if it was.
Yes. So this guy is the packet here. So streets was originally scheduled to pay just under 8,000 for personnel. Admin fees. It's gonna be 23,000 now. And in materials and services, that's going to go from 3,600 to. Oh, no, sorry, look at the wrong line. 20,000 for personnel and 31,59 for material.
Hold on, everybody's.
I'm trying to find that paper.
Yeah. So it's this.
I see that, well,
Yeah, so this guy here.
Okay, now start over.
Yeah. So, right here, this guy, the overhead fee for personnel was proposed at 7,963. After updating the numbers, is now at 20,174. That's the biggest change. If we go to materials and services, right here. It was proposed at 3,645. Actually, it was down a little bit to 3,150.
And that's a change because of the new formula?
Yes.
And, that was a question I wanted to ask early on, what the new formula is that based on the forensic audit or?
What had been done in the past?
as a result of that.
No, yeah, I think, no, that's two different questions, okay, you're saying whatever, what was done in the budget in the past, but not according necessarily to the forensic audit.
Correct. Actually, the formulas suggested in the forensic audit is not what's been used.
They are stale.
Still, yeah, well, I mean, I looked at it and I thought, well, because it still has, it has, internet, it still has internet on it, so, I mean, so the numbers are gonna be,
The audit was from 2013.
but we still had internet.
But you used the 18-19
Yes.
distribution plan?
Yes, yeah, what had been used in the past, yeah. Because if we had followed one of the recommendations per that forensic audit, the city light department would have been paying $1 million in overhead.
Oh, that sounds good.
I would love it, but that would bankrupt the light department.
Okay, any questions on? Heat.
I know, I'm trying to.
No, that's fine.
So I understand kind of the numbers down below, we're using them, below the line on this handout that we're looking at. Are the numbers that are using that formula that are consistent with what we used for budget days since 2019, correct?
And farther back, yeah.
And what are these numbers above that line?
So that's the formula used to get the numbers. So what had been done is, so the total spent on personnel is $1.6 million. 38% of that is coming out of the admin fee. And then that 38% gets applied to the other personnel expenses.
I got you, okay, thank you. So then, and the top line of this, like the for street, 53,089, where did that number come from?
That is the total of street personnel expenses. So if you're looking at the fund on the fund, there's the revenue, and the next chunk of budget lines is personnel expenses.
I'm here in your.
Yes, on which tab?
Eight.
Tab 8, thank you, I just want to kind of follow this so I understand it. So, tab 8, you're saying the personnel fee for street would be $2,080 and $89. And like, where is that on here then? So it's under expenses.
Where is it in the budget?
Yeah, where is that on?
So yeah, that specific number is not on the budget. So if you take that 61,053 back out, what was originally proposed, the 7,963, you get the 53,89.
Yeah, 61,053, got it.
Yeah, minus the 7,963.
Okay.
Yeah.
That would be the top line, the 53,000.
Yeah.
Okay. And then this new line of 20,174, where does that go? That's gonna go into the general fund.
Correct, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, I can do like 6.
all right, thank you.
I'm ready again, so we can look at it later. Here you go. Any more questions? Okay. So cemetery fund 17 to 25 is tab 12.
Yes, really, no change, well, a little bit less, the funds within the cemetery are slowly starting to go down. So estimated beginning fund balance of 7,000, with sales estimated for plots, opening, closing fees, other cemetery fees and interest. And then again, this is all a complete guess, not knowing how many people are gonna die, who's gonna be wanted to be buried or cremated and stay in Cascade box. I will note, as we are, I put the cemetery operations, cemetery trust in the same tab here. I will note that the auditors seemed a little confused as to why we had the cemetery trust fund. And, obviously not happening this year, but recommending in the future, we merge the two and essentially get rid of the trust fund.
No, do you have any ideas on that?
I don't, no, I could speculate, but I mean.
Yeah, I mean, there's not enough money in the trust fund to really do anything. I'm assuming it was meant for capital expenses within the cemetery, but $4,800 isn't gonna get you much. But again, that's for future, so.
So on the cemetery trust fund, is Memorial Trust on the line, that's the, is that going out or coming in? Because there's nothing, there's no income whatsoever.
Oh, that's not, that's just, yeah, I forgot to delete that line. Are we talking about that second from
The
bottom revenue? Yeah.
On the top part.
Yeah.
Good, raise a question.
Yeah, so. And this is kind of budget related, but more for council, this thing always seemed like a bit of a sideshow and headache for the city. And I've always been curious, would council entertain selling this to, one of the funeral opera home operators, in Hood River? And we no longer be in our portfolio, and just let someone else deal with this. I don't know if that's something you consider, but I've always felt like this city is busy enough, and it'd be nice if we had one less thing on.
Yeah, it would bring up a lot, I mean, not so much money, but definitely time for public works staff.
How much time, talking about mowing and.
Yeah.
Burying and.
Yeah. Overtime costs, water, yeah. It's not a huge amount, but it's, like I said,
It's just, yeah.
it's one more thing that our already overstretched staff is doing.
Is that connected to the car chargers?
No, completely separate.
And has Cascade Log, City of Cascade Log's always owned the cemetery?
What I'm aware of.
Right.
A long time,
Yeah.
Seems an odd thing to sell with.
The
Well, there's a lot-
assets in the books are very old and I don't want to opine, but the land is worth a lot of money and I guess it's a lot.
I mean, that's the thing, is I don't know who would buy it. I mean, we can't even get people to take over the South Bank power system, so.
Right.
Which.
The other note on this, in public administration school, they'll tell you that the government should do stuff that the private market won't do. Okay, or you don't want the private market to have a monopoly on. And this is a great example where the private market is perfectly capable of running cemeteries and running funerals, and they do it all over America. There really is no reason for the government to do it, we learned that with our cat TV and internet service, There's plenty of private market interest in running services like that. And, again, why let the private sector handle it? It's a big project for council, just something to put in your head.
Something in the future.
Yeah.
Mark it out, make a note. We're asking you, Jay. It's so much that comes out and you. All right, anything else? Anybody have any more discussion on that? All right, now let's move on to the water, part 21, tab 13.
The operating revenue expenses for the 24-25 water fund will be similar to 23-24. The water fund is probably the healthiest fund we have in the city with a growing beginning fund balance. The biggest change are a reduction in parts and supplies as the fund expended have been chronically under budgeted and an increase in transfer to reserves.
And this fund is for. Explain what the water fund is.
To operate and maintain water distribution to residents, businesses. It's the water tower, the $4 million project we're still paying off. It's all of that.
Yeah, I noticed there was an awful lot more going to capital reserve. Is there a reason for that?
Well, I mean, the fund is growing. We're getting money in. It's the best fund we have by far. We also cut, like I said, if you go to materials and expenses, parts and supplies, we cut down from a budget of 39.5 to 20,000. Which gave us the extra money to put in for both capital reserve fund and for the contingency fund. I mean, this fund is doing very good.
And then we're not doing hydrant maintenance here. That was completely eliminated eventually.
Correct, yes, we moved that to the capital outlay.
And then the workers' comp, why there was such a reduction?
Oh, yeah, that's one of the ones that still needs to be checked out. Yeah, I think I applied the office workers' comp percentage across the board, and I needed to adjust that, so.
Any questions? Great, let's go on to.
Wait, I have one question. On the insurance, is that forecast? I know insurance is going up for everything,
Yes.
but is that actual or is it pretty forecasting that? With 4,000 insurance underwater,
Yeah, forecasting, yeah.
you're forecasting it?
And I apologize, I meant to cover this in general fund, so, in general fund, it shows general fund, the proposal is that it pay the museum utilities. I forgot, what's the number for that?
About 4,000.
About 4,000.
Yeah.
And, I understand it wasn't too long ago that it used to be covered by tourism. And again, in the search for general fund dollars, if we can have tourism pay for that, I think that would be a smart move, given the general fund challenge we're
Yeah,
facing.
and we had that discussion last year of tourism paying for utilities for the museum during the tourism season, was the discussion we had.
Yeah.
And we can explore that again, yeah.
Right. I think that.
And that's part of the, sorry, recracking the entire general fund to see what's available.
Okay, yeah, I think that should be under consideration.
Yes, oh, yes.
Sure, you will be, okay.
The museum uses power all year.
Understand.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
but I don't think the general fund should pay for that. I think if
Right.
tourism dollars and the finance office and the attorney say we can spend it on that, then we need to free up general fund dollars
I agree
in that purpose. Okay, thank you. That's all I have on that. Sorry.
You sure?
Yes, ma'am.
Hey, sewer fund 31 is tab 14.
All right, this is the not fun one.
There's a fun one.
It's all fun, water is fun, I mean, it's all fun, this is the least fun. All right, the sewer fund is in need of help and increase in operating funding. The funds from the wastewater facility upgrade and the disarray in the finance department had been masking the lacking operating revenue in the fund. Revenue for the sewer fees is not expected to increase, while costs to operate the plant and pay staff will be increasing. Sewer rates have not increased since 2004, and Jacobs, our plant operators, have increased their fee 35% over the last 5 years to $160,000. The sewer bond refinance payment, $76,500, also comes directly out of sewer rates. 65,000 will need to be pulled, will actually go up now after we adjust administrative fees. From the sewer reserve to cover operating costs in 24-25. The $76,500 annual debt payment for the sewer bond will end in 2027-2028. To make up the $65,000 deficit, sewer rates will need to increase $10 per month from $45 to $55.
Does that change if we're increasing the admin and
Yes, that will go. Yep.
you don't know that number
I
yet?
didn't do that. Yep.
Well, what was the total for, how much extra is admin overhead gonna go up from what's in the numbers here?
For sewer, the total is, the new total is 61,900. Let me just a quick math here. Maybe about $8,000 increase. So we'd be at 73,000.
73,000.
Yes.
And how many houses, I mean, because you said 65,000 with $10 per month. Account.
Did that math, I think it's about 550 accounts. Yeah.
So I asked the city administrator about this in email, when was our last COSA? He said, we haven't had one in a while.
I asked, yeah, nobody knows.
And so, he kind of hinted at it, but as a budget committee member, I'm strongly suggesting that we get a cost study done as soon as possible. And then we go through a thorough rate analysis. I say council, you feel free to bring budget committee members in if you like us. We go through a thorough, rate analysis on sewer to get this fund back in proper standing. I don't like these numbers. I know Mary Ann doesn't like them. She complained to me on another, conversation. So we need to get this done, but again, you're kind of flying blind until we have a cost of service analysis. Otherwise, if you don't do that, they'll surprise us that that's what a customer will do. They'll say, here's what you need now, you're gonna need 5, 10, 15 years down the road. So to budget for all that stuff, these are the rates or roughly idea what kind of revenue you need to generate to make this a properly run utility. So I just wanna put my 2 cents for that and ask council that they engage that. Not now, but in this next budget year, we need to do that.
The sewer fund does have some money in reserve, cover that COSA. Can we use reserve funds to do a COSA?
I'm pretty sure you can. I mean,
I wanted to.
as the accountant, but Carl?
Do you know, have you seen anything about using reserve funds to cover cost of service analysis?
No, but I'm really curious about the auditors are asking a lot of questions about the rates and the changes in rates that we've had since the last audit period. So I'm really curious to see if they are going to recommend something or if we have to ask them and say, hey, we've got a shortcoming here. Can you please give us some advice?
I didn't think there was anything why we wouldn't, but I figured I'd ask if we are, so. Sure, did you have your?
Yeah, my question was, I keep hearing that we don't have any money in the general fund, which is normally where rate studies come from.
No, they usually come.
They're most out of utility pays for us.
My question was like, oh, and I keep hearing from the constituents, all these studies that don't go anywhere. And we're spending money on studies and stuff, and I'm like, well, I'm all for getting a cost of service study done so we can charge what we need to be solvent. But I also want to be careful because if we say we need a study here, we need a study here, we need a study here, then it goes, oh, what are all these studies for? I know we know they're necessary and needed, but a lot of people there. Just people sitting around making up numbers that they feel like you should just be able to
Yeah, it doesn't work.
just do it.
Yeah.
Doesn't work that way.
Well, I know, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
like, we need to be careful with,
I know, that's what people do, I
we need to be
get it.
careful with suggesting
It's our job to
studies when we,
communicate, you know?
that costs money, when we are saying that this utility itself doesn't have any money. It's running at a deficit, so it's like kind of,
I was just gonna say, taking the 65,000, dividing it by 550, and dividing that, you know, that gives you an annualized cost per household to cover the transfer to capital reserve. And then dividing that by 12 came out to $9.80. When I did the math at 73,000, which we said we need to raise that to, it came out to $11, so $1.20 more than what we're originally per month per household.
I mean, the other benefit, if anybody's watching out there, of a cost of services, they're gonna dive deep into what should industrial or a commercial customer be paying for a sewer bill. And that will help lessen the burden on all those residential rates. So trust me, you want this proper analysis. I know you know it. To those guys, folks, you want this, because it will be the most efficient application of the rate structure to all the payers and their ability to pay.
Yeah, and I think our system is tied to the size of the water line you are using, which is pretty typical. The bigger the water line you have, the more water you use that runs it.
That's normal.
So yeah, this is assuming every account is residential, not every account we have is the residential 5/8 inch line. So,
And some might actually pay a little bit more.
yes,
some
so,
might pay a little bit
yeah, that was just kind of a figure to give for the common resident of Cascade lots, yeah.
I think as a citizen, you see that you're spending money to charge me more money. Maybe I don't want you to do that, you know, I mean, that's.
I can arbitrarily set $100, or council can, I mean, that'll solve the problem.
Yeah. Okay, got it.
So I'm gonna refer to the electrical study we had. I know as a lot of citizens, they don't understand why you have to have a rate study, why you have to do this, but if with having the rate study, we came out with a clear plan and this is what you should be charging the high usage individuals like the data centers. This is what you should be charging the citizens. So realistically, having rate studies saves everyone in the constituents, in the community. Otherwise, the community would be footing the bill for data centers and all the power issues. So it's a tough thing, but rate studies, they're very helpful. They're very, very helpful. And now with electrical, we're on track. We have it's planned out for years.
It
So-
feels like another layer of bureaucracy.
But you know, well, in all fairness though, welcome to government. That's the thing I've learned, it's, you have to have studies, you have to have these things in order to be efficient. And that's part of the problem because these rate studies and people, the city didn't know what to do or how to charge it. But I don't want to talk about past, I just want to talk about the future. So as much as painful the studies are, I see the value.
I agree, but, so here we are this year. We don't have budget for a rate study and we're hearing that we might not be able to take it out of reserves funds. So we have to deal with this year and then maybe look to next year's budget, because they're $20,000 things, aren't they? Right.
It depends how deep you want the study to go. And the electrical one was 35 grand, I don't know what a sewer one would be, you'd have to get.
I can almost guarantee you that, that the reserve fund for sewer,
Yeah.
as long as it's not capital related per se, that is available to use for this type of work. Almost guarantee it, but that's what my accountant does.
What about SDCBs? I'd have to look into that one, I know those are pretty.
I don't know,
Yeah.
but again, it's a potential source,
Yeah.
so have someone explore it.
Yeah.
Make sure you're doing your accounting right, and then, yeah,
Don't get in trouble.
there's a good chance we can put in this year's budget by taking some of it money.
So, in this fund, the sewer fund, you have like, for the grants or the revenue, that's the loans and the grants, that's That's already been,
That's done.
that's
That's done. We have one payment left to process, which should be done this fiscal year. Everything's been received and spent.
And then
So good.
in materials and services, your miscellaneous and legal expenses has gone up significantly. Is there a reason why?
We've had some spills recently and we're kind of waiting to see if we get a fine from DEQ.
Spills where?
We had the marina pump that failed. We had one on, what's it called? On Waterfall, right in front of Gorgeous Beer. It came bubbling up out of the manhole. So we've had some overflows since I've been here, and just anticipating possible fines from DEQ.
You know,
I hope we don't get them, because we've reported them right away. But
and then obviously you're saying because of the situation of the funds, there's nothing to transfer to capital reserve.
correct.
Any more questions on the sewer fund?
Should we say, so we're taking money out of the capital reserve and we're not gonna, obviously that means we're not gonna have any that go back in there.
Yeah.
What would the balance in our capital reserve be? You know that after?
Yep, so right now sewer has, and actually $405,000, the budget at 405. We spent quite a bit on the new backhoe and the new truck for public works. A portion of that, both of those were covered by the reserve fund, so we're estimated to have 405,000.
So that's after taking the 65,000 that's in the budget.
Correct, yes. Well, no, that's total. So after that, we have 340.
And then now we're talking about taking another 7, so 330-ish.
Yeah, and then a COSA study would be 30 grand, give or take. So, I mean, we have the money in reserves to cover it. Yes.
But our reserve balance has gone down 25% now from the beginning of last fiscal year to the beginning of the end of this budget.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, because we're spending it.
Because we're not our rates aren't right. That's the thing that we all should be taking away.
I mean, my takeaway from this is like 3 more years operating like this, we have no.
Yeah, you'll bankrupt your utility.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. This is not sustainable, guys. I don't know how I always say it. And it leads to things like DEQ violations. And oh, by the way, the fish are the one, and I'm swimming out there, it's, nobody wins if you don't properly maintain your utility. You gotta do that.
I mean, that is something that I asked about, was why are we paying these fees and we're paying Jacobs? Why aren't they paying the fines if they're the ones operating the plant? The answer was that if they were negligent, then they would be responsible.
Correct,
But they're not negligent.
We're the owners.
It's things that happen.
Correct.
Who happens?
Yeah, that's right.
Any more discussion? All right, let's move on to fire and EMS, which is tab 9. Mr. Nine, let's paid off. Forgot. We not doing lines.
Okay, I'll read my blurb here really quick. Fire and EMS fund will see a slight increase, mostly from an increase in expected ambulance service fees. Operating expenses will stay mostly flat with a modest increase in ambulance reporting software costs that comes from accounting. A significant investment will be made in updating bunker gear for the firefighters. EMS service fee attached to the monthly utility bill expires at the end of 2024. Myself and Chief Logan are working to develop an increase that we will be. Wow, what did I tell you? Will be need to, that doesn't make any sense. We plan to present numbers at the council meeting on June 10th is our plan. We are also negotiating with Multnomah County to increase our contract fee to provide service between the county lines, Multnomah Falls. That contract has not been negotiated since 2008. It's been $20,000 since 2008. We are looking to get it up to $75,000, which is what Corbett Fire District gets to do the other side of Multnomah Falls. Multnomah County's rationale behind it is that, we provide ambulance service so we can make money off of billing for transports where Corbett Fire only does first medical response. We make $4,000 a year off of transports out between the county line. It's not enough to cover our costs of providing out there. So we have had discussions with the county chair's policy advisor and we just keep getting a stonewall. So, but we are working, on it. But until something's in concrete, I can't put it in the budget.
So we pretty much like Multnomah County Sheriff's Office and like this line item, I mean, you know, their budget, they've got the line item in their budget for contracted services for ambulance service, for Multnomah Falls, Cascade box, and why are, you know, like, we don't have any room for negotiation with the County Sheriff's Office, they're giving us a number, and we have to figure out what's our budget, why don't we just tell them this is the number?
We can do that.
But then if it doesn't happen,
Then if it doesn't happen, we're losing out on $20,000 and still have the same three paramedics we have. So it's not a great situation for us. I mean, 20 in the grand scheme, 20. Oh, go ahead, John. Sorry.
To answer Pete's question, we kind of did that with the meeting that we had on Zoom with them. I basically said 20,000 isn't enough. And if we can't get some sort of increase that we're gonna avoid the contract and not provide service in that area. And AMR would have to pick up the slack. Again, I'd like to apologize for not being there tonight. My wife's working, so I'm single dad tonight. But I welcome any questions about my budget there. Tiffany and I talked about two line items last week. One was the internship fund that got moved to reporting software. Currently, there's nobody that's interested in being an intern with us to help us pay for their schooling. And then we also moved the stipend program down to contract services with the Volunteer Association, like it had been in the past before the stipend program came around. And talks with Jordan. Nobody knows how to do the stipends, and it would be a lot of extra work for staff to get reports and then pay individual volunteers a stipend. So I talked with the Volunteer Association, and they would prefer the Volunteer Association get the money so they can spend it on themselves however they choose.
and then can you explain why the staff overtime has gone down from the 71,000 to the 17,000?
I think Jordan, I think that was we moved the overtime because currently right now everything their wages is mainly coming out of that one line item and not out of overtime for some reason. So I think we had just combined it all into one for staff wages.
Correct. The paramedics typically work a 56-hour work week, 40 hours regular, 16 hours overtime, and then the payment of regular versus overtime pay was two separate lines. We put it all together on one line. And then the overtime is part of a grant we got. That's from the grant, right, John?
Correct. That's the state fire marshal grant that pays for the two firefighter EMTs. And then some of that money was redirected into overtime for paramedic staff. That way, if I needed an extra paramedic on a red flag warning day or there's some big summer event, I could pull in an extra paramedic, so we would have two staffed ambulances for that weather event or whatever event's going on in town during the summer months.
And then the other.
That's all grant money. That's not city money.
Okay. And then the other line item that changed was the contractor service emergency reporting went from 800 to $6,000.
Yeah, we moved that money from the internship line item that had $5,000 in it. So we zeroed that out and moved it down there. Our current reporting software, the state provides it to us with some monies that we have to pay because we're an ambulance company, so we have to pay for what they call a validation for our medical reports. Some of the other agencies don't like it, so we're currently in research and development for a new reporting software possibly. So I just wanted to have some money in that line item in case I got outvoted at the county level to change reporting softwares.
And then I have one more question. How many active volunteers do we have now?
We have about 14 active volunteers.
Good.
It's 9 of them live in town.
Go ahead. 9 of them live in.
9 of them live in town, and the remainder live outside of the area, but they travel in for drill nights and or to pick up various shifts that need covered.
Chief, do you mind just taking us through your staffing chart? So it kind of staffing / org chart. Tell me again, we got a chief, paramedics, blah, blah. Talk me through those numbers, please, and the volunteers. What's your whole department look like?
Yeah, certainly. So we have a chief, we have 3 paramedics that work a rotating shift of 48 hours on, 96 hours off. And then we have about 14 active volunteers that respond at all times of the day to help support the career staff and emergency response. Obviously, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, the volunteer response is low because they're all at work. But after 5, until about 6 in the morning ish, we get a fairly good turnout of volunteers. Mother's Day was a great example. We had a car wreck on I-84 in our Multnomah County contract area. And then right as the first ambulance was transporting, we got dispatched to a trail rescue on Triple Falls. And so I called in the one off-duty paramedic that lives in town, and we handled that. Both resulted in 3 people transported. So we got some significant revenue possibly from that. We all know that unlike the other city departments and their service and billing, if you don't pay an ambulance bill, I can't cut off your service. I have to continue to service you regardless of whether you pay. So you could call every day and I could transport you every day, and I would have to if you requested to go to the hospital. So I can't not transport somebody to the hospital because they cannot pay.
So, did I understand that you got 3 paramedics budgeted for, and all those positions are filled? Is that right?
Currently, all the positions are filled. We're going to have 1 paramedic leaving in the middle of June. She accepted a teaching job in Southwest Oregon. So hopefully this week or next week, we'll be advertising that position to try to limit the amount of time that we're down a paramedic. But 2 of our volunteer paramedics said that they would step up and fill any open shifts as needed.
Okay, and then I see an EMT firefighter position. That's budgeted for and vacant right now, or what is the status there?
So that is part of a Oregon State Fire Marshal upstaffing grant that we received of $35,000. So those are 2 positions for additional seasonal firefighter EMTs to come on to help us during the summer, and all of that is paid for by the State Fire Marshal through a grant. So that is no city dollars, tax dollars going to those positions. It is all a State Fire Marshal grant.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Pete,
What was the response to with Multnomah County on that Zoom call when you talked about raising the contract?
I think a little shock to start that we would take that hard of a stance. There's been some follow-up emails, and The chairs did agree that we needed some sort of raise. She didn't like full on say that we were gonna get a dollar figure exactly. So how I came up with the $76,000 that we asked for, I 20% of our call volume is in our Multnomah County contract area. So I took 20% of our budget and figured that out and was about $131,000. And then I took monies out for possible ambulance and or fire response revenue to come up with $76,000 that they should be paying us to provide service in that area. If we're spending 20% of our time there and they're only covering 2% of our total budget, that number is very out of sorts. They were pretty receptive to that number. Nobody questioned the math and how I got there. So I don't know what they're going to come out and say, but I would take any sort of a raise would be a step in the right direction. With if we don't get what we asked for this go around, then we're going to renegotiate next year as well.
Better or for worse, Multnomah County is in a mess.
Yeah.
As far as the AMR and all of that, so for better or for worse, now's a really good time to negotiate, because they don't want any more on their plate, and yeah, it's because it's just horrendous.
I think we have a strong case. So one other question, Chief Logan, so, you know, when I was working here, we always lamented the fact that if we had more paramedics, we wouldn't lose some of these transports. But now we've got 3, we lost quite a few to Hood River because we just simply didn't have the coverage. What is the status? Are we losing them in a given year, or are we getting the vast majority that come through Cascade Locks?
Without like sitting at my desk with the numbers right in front of me, I believe that last year we only lost 1 transport to Skamania County, and that was because we were on 2 other calls at the same time. We have drastically changed, and we respond to Multnomah County and Skamania County more than they come here. We have not asked for any from Hood River Fire's ambulance. Obviously, fires are a different story. They bring their fire engine down if we have a large fire. But we've responded to Hood River County multiple times and transported people in Hood River's ASA, as well as Skamania County. And we only lost 1 call due to the fact that we were on 2 other calls at the same time that one came out. So I would say that's a pretty big win for us.
I would agree.
Over the last 3 months, we've done 4 interfacility transfers, which are pretty much guaranteed money, because there's a doctor signing off that they need to be transported from one hospital to the other, in comparison to last year where we did 1. So we're actively working on increasing our revenue any way we can, through taking more interfacility transfers. We added the Forest Service into our building last budget year, and that has worked out tremendous. We just finalized the contract for the next 5 years, and so this year the rate will stay the same as last year, and then going forward each year after, they will get an increase of $250 for a total of $11,000 total contract in year 5.
So one other question, so the fees we charge when we provide these services, have they been stuck at 2008 levels, or have they been adjusted?
Our ambulance rates were adjusted last year, and in talking with some other ambulance providers in the area and around the state, what a lot of people are doing is they are doing a yearly cost of living increase to their ambulance rates depending on their area. So currently Hood River Fire's ambulance rates get a COLA increase every year. And that's something Jordan and I are discussing and seeing if we want to move forward with that in the city of Cascade Locks.
We just increased them last June, July, so within the last year.
So we feel comfortable that the costs we're charging are being covered by the revenue, assuming these guys, the billing process works through.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah,
we're
so-
charging equal to the cost that's we're incurring, that's what I'm trying to ask.
That's a
Yeah.
good, yeah. Go ahead, John, sorry.
Yeah, I think our current ambulance rates are pretty fair in what we expend. I mean, I haven't really got way down in the weeds. For our current ambulance rates, I kind of took a look at what everybody else in the area was charging, and we were the second lowest in the area. And so I found a happy medium between the rest of them. One of my goals is to really dive into our ambulance rates and figure out exactly what we're spending on the ambulance. I started that at the beginning of this budget process of moving ambulance only items into like a separate spreadsheet where I could track how much, we pay for a paramedic and how much all the equipment on the ambulance costs, and trying to run the ambulance side of the house way more like a business. Obviously the fire side is the fire side, and it's a requirement that the city's required to provide. So that's where your tax dollars come in, but trying to make the ambulance side run in the black to offset costs to the cities. We're not quite there yet, but I am actively working on trying to really nail down our total expenses. I need to do a lot more research and get a good inventory management software in so I can track all of our items coming in and out and see where we're spending the bulk of our money going forward.
Excellent.
And hopefully, you heard that conversation earlier about us wanting the EMS overhead and material and services reflected in the budget so that we know what it costs to run the department. Did that make sense?
Yeah, I heard that. And again, I apologize for not being there. Single dad net tonight with a baseball game mixed into the whole thing. And I would like to send a shout out to Tammy for all of her years of service to the city. I hear she's leaving us and she's going to be greatly missed.
Yeah. Here. Hey, do you have any questions for us, John?
I do not. Are there any more questions for the budget committee?
I just want to say thank you for being the chief, being on call 24/7. And being also without a secretary, that you do all this administrative work as well. And I just wish our budget reflected compensation that met
Yeah,
all that
Jordan
you
and I were having a conversation today. I would love to hire somebody to manage our Medicare, Medicaid stuff, because that is not the most fun thing to do. It is super confusing, but we're working through it, and I appreciate the budget committee looking at my budget and approving anything.
I apologize for the agenda mess up and keeping you online. I would have put you on first if I would have known where we're at. But thank you for sticking around and hanging out to the end. Appreciate it.
No problem. I'm gonna sign off and go see what my kids are up to. Have a great night.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Councilwoman, could I please interject?
Yes.
I think I just want to say John Logan I'm jealous of his ability to crunch numbers. He's very, very good at it.
Thanks, Carl.
From our finance officer.
Yeah. Now we all got question marks now. All right, well, that puts us at the end of last week's agenda. And we have 10 minutes to spare, so. Is the agenda good for next week now?
Yeah, so I will, the marching orders for the general fund. I will adjustments to the overhead fees for, everything we've discussed so far. I'll have everything prepared to discuss the rest of the funds next week.
Which is electric.
Yeah, everything else on the list, yeah.
Okay, because we covered SDCs and grants and tourism tonight.
Yeah.
Because I got confused. Okay, mark it down on the calendar.
Happens to the best.
Doesn't happen really often.
You also covered,
Yeah, do we have?
you also covered cemetery.
Yeah, all the public works.
Yeah, we did all that, yeah.
Yeah, there's.
Yeah, is there anybody on, that has any other comments before we continue the meeting to another night? Okay, very good. Then, we'll continue the meeting till the next.
22nd.
22nd at 6:30.
Yeah, and thanks for all.
Then next Monday.
Yeah.
Wednesday.
Thank you.